Running killed my gains, is what I would say if I was a massive loser. And we've all heard this idea before, right? That cardio kills your gains and running makes you skinny. And whilst there is some competition between running longer distances and building as much muscle as possible, for the average guy that wants to have a lean, athletic and muscular physique, whilst also becoming a better runner and gradually running longer distances, you can absolutely do both. I mean, just take me as an example. I come from a predominantly gym background and spent years doing pretty much nothing but lifting weights, whereas now I run 50, 60 kilometers per week. I'm prepping for a sub 1 hour 30 half marathon and a sub 3 hour 15 marathon, and I've maintained pretty much all of my muscle and would argue that I actually look better now than I ever have done before. The problem isn't running itself. It's that when most people start running, they have no idea how to adjust their diet, how to structure their training, or how to build their lifestyle around everything. So inevitably they lose a bunch of muscle, start getting weaker in the gym, and don't make any progress. They then just circle it back round and end up blaming it on the running. And the funny thing is, there's literally only 3 things that you need to be doing to prevent that from happening in the first place. So if you want to run without losing your muscle and killing your gains, you're in the right place, because in this video, I'm going to break down what those 3 things are so you can start implementing them right away and know exactly what to do. So let's get into it. Number 1, you need to train with some fucking intensity. Ironically, this is probably the most obvious one, yet it's the one I see lads get wrong all the time. What you need to understand about muscle tissue is that it's metabolically expensive, and your body doesn't care if you've spent the last couple of years getting into the gym and building some muscle if when you start running you've got the wrong resistance training structure, you don't understand intensity or intensity markers like RIR and RPE. RIR stands for reps in reserve and RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion, and these are incredibly useful because they allow us to gain an understanding of how hard you're actually training. For example, let's say I'm doing split squats and I have a set of 10 reps. If at the end of that set I feel like I had an extra 2 reps in the tank, then I would have trained at 2 reps in reserve. And RPE is essentially another way of expressing the same idea. It just works on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how hard you found that set. RPE 10 would mean you've taken that set to complete failure and you've got no more reps left in the tank, whereas RPE 9 would mean you've got around 1 rep left, RPE 8 would probably mean you've got around 2 reps left, and you get the idea. The problem I see a lot of guys making is A, they don't understand these intensity markers, and B, they don't use them in their training, which means their resistance training is nowhere near where it needs to be. You don't need to destroy yourself every single session, especially because you're trying to recover from running, but equally if you're finishing every set knowing you've got another 4, 5 or 6 reps left in the tank, then you're going to start losing muscle. So you want to make sure the majority of your sets are around 1 to 3 reps in reserve or RPE 7 to 9. Now because you're putting more emphasis on your training intensity and training fucking hard, something you might need to change is your training volume. This is something that I did when I first started running, and it was a complete game changer. Instead of going into the gym and doing 3, 4 or 5 sets on every single exercise, I backed off a little bit and instead focused on completing 2 really hard sets instead. The key is that both of these sets were at 2 different rep ranges. One was slightly lower and the other was slightly higher, but both were taken within 1 to 2 reps of failure. This meant that I was providing sufficient stimulus to maintain my muscle tissue and get stronger without causing unnecessary fatigue because I chopped off all of that junk volume. I'm able to recover quicker, train harder, and run more without having to worry about getting injured or burning out. Think about it like quality over quantity. You need to look at your training week as one program instead of having your gym sessions over here and your running program over here that have nothing to do with one another. They should blend in as one and complement one another perfectly. And actually, whilst we're on the topic, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but how do I put all of this together? I've actually already done it for you. I've put together a completely free 10-week run and lift program designed to get you leaner, fitter, faster, and stronger than you've ever been before. It contains everything you need and lays out all of your gym sessions and all of your running sessions so you know exactly what to do. So rather than guessing your way through this process and making it up as you go along, you can head to the link in the description and download it for free. Just pop your email in and I'll send it over. Number 2, learn how to fuel correctly. When you start running, your energy expenditure is going to increase pretty significantly. And if you don't know how to correctly adjust your diet on the back end of this, you're going to book yourself a one-way ticket to Scrawnsville. Now let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Yes, protein is important and you already know that it aids in the repair and rebuild of muscle tissue. And for most people that are trying to balance running and lifting, you're probably going to need a little bit more protein than the average person. So I'd aim for anywhere between 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. But to be completely honest with you, I think people focus way too much on protein and not enough on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are going to be your body's primary fuel source for high intensity running and resistance training sessions. So if you're trying to run faster, further, lift weights and recover sufficiently, but you're not eating enough carbohydrates, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot and making your life 10 times harder. Not to mention 10 times more miserable because carbohydrates carbohydrates taste fucking brilliant. Now, the mistake that most lads make, and the one that you need to avoid, is stop yourself from turning it into a free-for-all and just smashing 5, 6, 700 grams of carbohydrates every single day, because that's unnecessary and you'll probably get fat. Your carbohydrate intake should reflect the amount of training that you're actually doing. This is why with my own nutrition and with my clients' nutrition, I incorporate high days and low days. If today's a rest day, I definitely don't need to eat the same amount of carbohydrates as I would do if I was going to go for a 25-kilometer long run. For normal training sessions and shorter runs, you really don't need to overthink it, and there's really not a great deal of fueling that needs to go down. But for your longer runs and more intense sessions, usually those that last 60 minutes, 90 minutes, or even longer, that's where you need to start thinking about fueling properly. A great starting point that I used when I first started running was around 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. When you're first starting out, you want to be a little bit more modest with it because your body and gut simply isn't going to be used to intaking that amount of fuel. Whereas more experienced athletes or people that have been training for longer would have trained their gut over time to handle more carbohydrates. Start small and build your way up gradually. So where should you get your carbohydrates from? Unfortunately, we can't just start smashing cookies and donuts before our sessions. I mean, you could, but it's probably not the best idea. The majority of your carbohydrate intake throughout the day should come from whole food sources. These are things like rices, pastas, and bagels. But if you want to get a little bit more specific with your pre and intra-workout carbohydrates, that's where you can do a little bit of experimenting. There is a multitude of different gels, sports drinks, and chews that you can choose from. The only issue is you're not going to really know what works for you until you've tried a bunch of them. For me personally, things like gels don't really sit too well with my stomach and they give me the shit. So I'll usually go for some sort of sports drink instead. But everybody is different, and that's why you need to try a bunch of different things to find what works best for you. And number 3, you need to nail your recovery. And I don't just mean eat a little bit more protein and start stretching. Your recovery needs to be a full 360 process. If you're already training in the gym 3 or 4 times per week, and then you add in 2 or 3 runs in on top of that, if you don't have the right recovery pillars in place, you're going to get burnt out, struggle with fatigue, and then get injured. But before we even get into what those recovery pillars are, you need to adjust your training accordingly. And this links perfectly into the first point that I spoke about. Understanding training intensity, volume, how to change and adapt your resistance training program to incorporate running on a weekly basis is vital. Otherwise, your performance is going to suffer and you're going to stay stuck. So once again, if you want to make sure that you're structuring everything correctly, you can download my completely free 10-week run and lift program via the link in the description. Once you've done that, you can start focusing on optimizing your recovery properly, and it all starts with sleep. If you're running and lifting, training multiple times per week, but you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep each night, there is no amount of recovery gadgets or ice baths that's going to help you. I believe that sleep is the most overlooked performance tool that we have, and it's the easiest way for you to get the most out of your training. You should be aiming for at least 7 to 9 hours of good quality, undisrupted sleep each night. The second thing you need to focus on is your rest days and easy sessions. If your gym sessions are taken to absolute failure on every single exercise every single week, your easy run turns into a half marathon PB and your interval sessions are absolutely killing you, then you leave no room for recovery. You should have days where your training demand is relatively low. A great example of these are your easy runs. These should be performed at a conversational pace. You're not trying to sprint out the blocks and write yourself off. You're trying to build easy mileage whilst allowing your body to recover. But you also need to be incorporating proper rest days. Take at least 1 or 2 days every single week where you don't do any training and you just focus on giving your body a chance to catch up. The third recovery pillar you need to focus on is managing fatigue and separating your hardest sessions. You need to be able to recognize when you're not recovering. Sometimes you'll sleep terribly and have an awful session afterwards, or maybe you've had a stressful day at work and your run doesn't quite go to plan. That's absolutely fine and that's normal. But you need to be able to recognize trends over time. Is your gym performance consistently stagnating? Are your easy runs suddenly feeling difficult? Has your training motivation completely disappeared? All of those can be a sign that you're under-recovered. And if you are experiencing all of them consistently, then I'd definitely look into managing your recovery a little bit better. Could you lower your running volume for 1 week? Could you take a deload week, or could you add in an extra rest day? These are all tools that you have in your toolbox to utilize when you can feel your body struggling to recover. And it's also important that you separate those hardest sessions. Don't go smashing a ridiculously hard leg day and then following it up with a really tough interval session. That's only going to hinder your recovery. So it turns out you can run without losing all of your muscle when you know what you're doing. Who'd have thought it? If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And remember, if you want to make life easier for yourself, you can download my completely free 10-week run and lift program via the link in the description. Leave any comments and questions that you have down below. I will be replying to all of them. And of course, if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe so I can see you in the next one.